Recorded live from Space Coast Podcast Studios in Melbourne, Florida, this is the Cannabis Report with Michael Patterson, brought to you by MGMC Pharma Group. We make a difference. Check out the virtual tour of our cannabis cultivation facility on our website at mgmc-group.com. Now, here's your host, Michael Patterson.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you so much for coming into our show. Yes, I am Michael Patterson, and this is the Cannabis Report. And today we're having a great guest on, Dr. Callie Seaman, who is from the UK, and we're going to learn all about what she does and a lot about the UK law with medical cannabis and what's been going on there. So very excited to have her on all the way from the other side of the pond. We just had our debut on YouTube, our first show, so we're very excited about that. We learned that some people love Mark singing and others don't. So
it's an acquired taste.
Really? Yeah, I think it is an acquired taste. So we're going to try to limit.
We're going to tomato.
Really, we're going to try to limit his ability to sing, so it'd be a little bit better in that respect. So overall, if you haven't seen the show or listened to the show, our goal is to educate about the cannabis industry all over the planet. There's a lot of things going on in the world today about cannabis, and a lot of people don't know where to turn, and this is where you should turn for your cannabis knowledge and to understand what's going on and to meet all the great people in this industry that are doing great things. So one of the first parts of the show is we go into the news. So, Mark, take it over with the news.
It's time for Cannabis News.
Well, Mike, I'm glad that you told everybody that I'm not in the studio. I'm actually in the South Studio this is Space Coast Podcast Studio South in beautiful Boynton Beach, Florida. So for you on the podcast, I look just as handsome as I did the other day.
Really?
For you on video, obviously you can tell my handsomeness still exudes through the camera, right, even though I'm in Space Coast Podcast Studio South. Yes. Moving on to the news. The news is sponsored by Integrated Compliance Solutions, from cannabis banking compliance software support to merchant processing services for cannabis hemp CBD business. ICS is your seed to bank solution. For more information, please go to icslv.com. So, Mike, Democrats are in control of the Congress, and investors are high on cannabis, pun intended. Georgia's January 5th election results, which flipped the Senate to Democratic control, has lit a fire under the cannabis industry. The market for legal U.S. product was already forecast to more than double to $41.5 billion by 2025, according to New Frontier data. Now it's expected to do even better, with more states legalizing on a faster timeline and full national decriminalization a distinct possibility this year. Companies are raising cash and reworking their strategies as the prospects grow that 2021 could be the year that some of our regulatory dreams come true, from gaining access to banking and relief from a crushing federal tax burden. Since California legalized medical marijuana back in 1996. Can you believe that? 25 years ago, we first had legalized medical marijuana in the United States. There's been a growing state-by-state acceptance of the plant and its derivatives, including hemp and CBD. Canada legalized pot in 2018, creating an industry dominated by companies that have listed on U.S. exchanges, enticing American investors. Then came the Rona, the pandemic, in which the cannabis dispensaries were declared an essential service by many states, and more consumers turned to cannabis than ever for anxiety, sleepless nights, or just something to do in the Rona environment. And with Democrats in control of Congress, there's hope that legislation such as the STATES Act, the Safe Banking Act, and the MORE Act will gain traction. We'll talk about those in a second. In the 24 hours after Georgia's results became clear, Curaleaf Holdings, the largest U.S. multi-state operator, announced that investors had pumped in more than $200 million in fresh capital. Eric Hewley of Platinum Advisors states, there's an opportunity to light up a demographic in the way that soccer moms or NASCAR dads were a key demographic, Huey states. The message is you don't want to run afoul of the cannabis voter. They live all over. They're Republican, Libertarian, and Democrat. And if you're on the wrong side of this issue, it is no longer a free pass. So, Mike, have you seen the same situation in your business as this article says from Newsweek?
We have seen the exact
Bloomberg.
same. We have seen the exact same interest, I guess you'd say, and I'm sure Dr. Callie will bring her in later and discuss that, and I'm sure she'll have some interesting thoughts about that. But what we've seen here is our team has been inundated with calls from people all over the planet. What's this going to happen, and is the U.S. going to go legal? And what I tell people is, it's going to happen, but it's not going to happen exactly like we think it is. With some of these acts, with the SAFE Act and the MORE Act, basically the MORE Act is they want to decriminalize, they want to legalize cannabis 100% and move forward and just start going quickly. I keep telling people, look, you want this to be legal, but we got to do it in the right way. We're already having problems with the CBD. They still haven't ruled on it from the FDA and what those percentages can be in products. And also, we need to make sure we do this in a proper way to find out. We need to figure out the tax rate. We need to figure out the social equity side. We need to figure out how this is going to be infused into the insurance side for Medicare and Medicaid. You know, how do you put a CPT code on a flower product? You know, so these are the things that people need to understand. We have to get this right because other countries, UK especially, and Europe, all the countries there, all these countries are going to be looking to the U.S. to say, okay, whatever the U.S. is going to do, we need to have some sort of similar program so we can make sure we have trade going back and forth. So, yes, I want this to happen, and we're getting more calls, and we're going to see more investment. And what I see is those dollars coming into the industry are exactly what you're going to see in pushing the needle towards cannabis because the soccer moms are getting involved. All these types of groups are getting involved. The last national poll we had, 93% of Americans want medical cannabis legal. Over 68% want recreational cannabis legal. So we want that money can continue to infuse into the market because that's going to push us to have federal action.
Well, I think that we're starting to see this. In any industry, you're going to have the early adopters, then you're going to have the mainstream, and then you're going to have the laggards. I think that we're moving past early adoption, and now we're moving into mainstream. And I think I agree with you that we'll just start see the acceleration of these opportunities for cannabis. Hence this fantastic show.
Exactly.
All right. Now, Pyxis International to focus on tobacco and e-liquid divisions. Mooresville, North Carolina, article out of Financial Times. Pyxis International, a global value-added agricultural company, announced after a strategic review by the board of directors of Pyxis that it intends to divest its cannabis business in order to focus on its more profitable tobacco and e-liquid businesses. In addition, the company has taken action to restructure its industrial hemp and CBD operations to minimize financial investment in that business. In connection with the plan, the company's 3 Canadian cannabis subsidiaries filed and received protection from their creditors under the company's Creditors Arrangement Act, which is the Canadian form of bankruptcy. So, Mike, we just had an article saying that all this money's flooding in, and then this tobacco company is getting out of cannabis. Tell me why.
Well, the number one reason is everybody, in what I see is everybody thinks that big pharma, big tobacco, big alcohol can just come in here and is going to dominate. And this is showing you that it's just not that easy. Cannabis is not tobacco. Cannabis is not pharmaceuticals, and cannabis is not alcohol. So it's bits and pieces of all those industries. But also when these guys got involved in big tobacco, so to speak, if you don't know who Pyxis is, they're basically big tobacco. One of the companies is they treated it like tobacco. And so one of the things is we all know what the tobacco laws are around the world. We still have cannabis laws evolving over time. So you're based a business model and financial model based off of tobacco, which has been in existence for thousands of years, and the regulated markets have been in practice for hundreds of years. So you're going to have a learning curve. And to me, Pyxis and others, even in the cannabis space, Canopy Growth, has cut back a lot of their operations around the world, and they're in the cannabis space because people are jumping out into this and dumping in a ton of money, and it's going to take a little time for the markets to increase in our regulatory structure to get stable to where financial markets can benefit. In the U.S., it's interesting because companies can benefit because we do, believe it or not, like you mentioned, 96 is when California came in for regulation. We actually have regulation here for over 20 years, but the problem is it's not congruent from state to state. So every state's different. So you can make good money here in the States. You can make good money around the world, but in regards to Pixis, not everybody, just because you have knowledge in a general area of tobacco or alcohol or pharmaceuticals, doesn't mean you have a ticket to be successful in the cannabis space. And so also for those dreamers out there, it shows you that just because you're big and you have money doesn't mean you're going to know it all. And so what we see coming in the cannabis space is a lot of entrepreneurial aspects and a lot of entrepreneurial companies coming in where we don't know where the big company's going to be yet. Canopy and the Auroras of the world, those are big companies now, but we don't know for sure if those big companies will be the same in another 3, 4, 5 years.
It's almost like the dot-coms where they first came in and you started, you'd have the bigger ones, and then, down the road in that 2.0 where the market resets itself. And I think that you and I have discussed that where cannabis is starting to become the cannabis 2.0, where you get those people that come in just for, hey, I can make a lot of money because I sell cannabis, and they realize it's actually a business. And this is unlike no other. The industry is going to, kind of settle itself. And you mentioned several states, and we'll move to Arizona. Adult use cannabis sales in Arizona could begin within days. Adult use cannabis can start very soon in Arizona. State health officials said that they are set to issue recreational licenses to the state's current operators who have applied for adult use licenses. A spokesman for the Department of Health Services told the Republic that 40 dispensaries had applied to sell adult use cannabis. Businesses interested in selling cannabis to adults must pay a $25,000 fee, and there are 131 total medical cannabis dispensaries currently operating in the state. Raul Molina, a partner and senior vice president of operations for the Mint dispensary, says, "I'm so ready. We expect rushes like 420 for probably 10 to 30 days straight. Basically, it's going to be a 420 for a full month." The state's implementation of the adult use program is among the quickest among states that have moved from a medical to adult use sales, as voters only just approved the referendum during November's general election. So now, Mike, Arizona is legal. California obviously was legal. Was it last year for recreational? Where do you see that Southwest?
Well, I just have to correct you, Mark. So California went legal in 2016, but it took 2 years to put in a regulated market to make it to actual have sales. So just like you said from the article, what we're learning is states are getting more savvy as they move forward into this market. So California went legal in 2016 for rec, but product didn't start flowing until 2018 because of all the red tape, and California's a lot bigger state. So what Arizona did, they learned from other states' mistakes. And so now you had a medical program that's been in Arizona for many years, and now they can be able to evolve into recreational very quickly. And so that's where the citizens of Arizona will benefit. And also, I always heard about the psychological portion of this industry. So psychologically, more people are going to go there. It's just like being able to go to any other store to pick up a service or a product, and mentally that's a big shift. And so that's what you're going to see, the legalization and cannabis being in adopting more into all of society, not just here, but you'll see it overseas. Overseas is a little bit slower. And so Dr. Callie, when she comes on, she'll give us an idea of what is the mindset, the psychological aspect of cannabis over there? Because one of the things for this industry to move forward is you have to change the psychological aspect of what people think about that. And that takes time. But that time is shortening, at least here in the States, because we've been so familiar and accustomed with cannabis. You're going to start seeing more shows coming out with cannabis. The show with Jim Belushi on Discovery Channel ended up being a hit. There's a lot of different shows you're going to see. We hope to be one of those shows moving forward, whether it be the Cannabis Report or other shows that what we would be working on, because we see this coming as a societal thing pushing forward. So this is great.
Legalization creates normalization.
Right.
See, I just summarized everything you said, Mike.
Thanks,
and
Mark. Appreciate
seconds.
it.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate
That's a
it.
great tag team. And moving from another state, we're going West Coast now. We're kicking it over to East Coast. South Carolina's Medical Cannabis Act garners new support. So support is building in South Carolina for medical cannabis reform. The Compassionate Care Act has consistently passed the state Senate in recent years, but has failed to make it to the governor's desk. This year, in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic and an ongoing opioid crisis, some powerful state senators are putting their names on a bill. Representative Senator Goldfinch Jr. states, 10 years ago, I would have said never. 5 years ago, I would have said, yeah, maybe 10 years from now. And last year, I would have said, yeah, I think we're going to get it next year. The opioid crisis has really brought to light the idea to bring an alternative to opioid and legal heroin, as I call it. So Senator Davis introduced the Compassionate Care Act in late 2020. Although the bill does not allow for the smoking of medical cannabis, it does name 10 qualifying conditions and opens the door for terminal patients with less than 1 year to live to use medical cannabis. Addressing the opioid crisis directly, the bill says doctors can recommend medical cannabis for conditions opioids could be used to treat. Now, 8,835 South Carolinians died from opioid-related overdose in 2018, which was a significant increase from the 628 opioid deaths in 2016. Synthetic opioid overdose from fentanyl saw the greatest increase. So, Mike, another way where obviously cannabis can be an alternative to opioids.
Well, it is, and also if with South Carolina, this is the third time. Okay, so
third time's a charm.
Right. So if you look at New Zealand, just tried to legalize recreational, it failed the first time. California tried to legalize recreational the second time they finally got it through. Right now, South Carolina's on their third time with medical cannabis, and I think this time it's going to pass because the state is ready. If you saw what happened with Virginia, Virginia is going to try to pass recreational cannabis, which is huge for the South. So if you're not familiar, outside of D.C., Virginia is a southern state, let me tell you.
Oh, no doubt.
And
our folks are from there.
Our grandfather is from there, and as an aside, he had a pharmacy there in South Boston, Virginia, Southern Virginia, and he actually sold medical cannabis until it was illegal in 1937. So Mark and I come from a long list of legal...
Carrying on the family tradition.
Right,
Mike,
carrying on the family tradition.
Correct.
So what we see is South Carolina has to go because Georgia just went medical. So when you have states that touch each other, it starts to become a harder situation where you have it illegal in one state and legal in another. So now we're getting past the point of ideology, and we're getting down into raw taxes and raw income. And so I expect South Carolina to pass this, and the Republicans will try to push it through by having some sort of tax on it. As long as the tax is below 6%, it should be fine. When you start taxing medication higher, then you're going to get a lot of people who are going to start pushing back on that. And also they need to use that money to either, whether it be bring in schools, help with drug treatment, a lot of different things that'll help society, because as we all know, COVID decreased the state's ability to raise money through taxes because a lot of people didn't do sales tax, they didn't go out to dinner, they didn't do a lot of stuff. So we think that South Carolina is going to go this year, and it just depends on how they're going to structure it, on how many stores and grows, because that's going to determine how quickly they can get this up and running.
Well, you're starting to see that, the Democrats have always been in favor, but Republicans are starting to realize that it is not advantageous for them to vote against cannabis regulation. And, this is one topic that the country can agree upon. So hopefully this is going to be, the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, after COVID. So that's it for the news, Mike. I'll take it back over to you and your nice pocket square. It looks great today.
I have a better pocket square today, yes, in that respect. So, this is awesome. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring the great Dr. Callie Seaman into the show. So, Mark, take it away.
So we're going to tally-ho, toodle-pip, and tucks away to jolly old England, where our guest today is co-founding director of Aqua Labs Limited and a leading expert of the UK hydroponic industry. She became passionate about medical cannabis over 20 years ago when she was diagnosed with epilepsy. When this 5'7", 75-kilogram hydroponic and patient advocacy juggernaut isn't making the world better through cannabis, She's checking out live music and has Cypress Hill, Chili Peppers, and Foo Fighters on her iPod playlist. I like her more already. Her favorite color is purple. She's never been skinny dipping, and she wants to remind everyone, if you have a dream, you have to have a dream to have a dream come true. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm Cannabis Report welcome to Dr. Callie Seaman.
Dr. Callie, welcome to the show.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh,
Dr. Callie,
wonderful.
my first question to you, best concert you ever been to?
Oh, that has to be Cypress Hill at Brixton Academy in London.
Ooh,
That
Cypress
was
Hill.
Wow.
Look at you.
2001.
Oh,
Nice.
Black Sunday album, absolutely classic. There was
Awesome.
just a smog across the whole place.
Oh.
It was one of the best memorable. Well, I say memorable.
Yes,
So Dr.
yes.
Callie shows you can be in cannabis and still have a good time at a very high professional level, which is wonderful, So Dr. Callie, thank you so much for joining us. If you can, let's start off by telling us a little bit about your background and your company now, and then we'll get into UK law a little bit.
Right. So I originally did a degree in biomedical sciences and went to work for GlaxoSmithKline for a year. Really didn't like it, didn't feel it was for me. Because, I mean, this was what my dream was. I was going to work for a pharmaceutical company and save the world and, invent the drug that would cure AIDS. That was my dream at 15. But I soon quickly realised that wasn't the kind of route I wanted to go down. And my dad, I was very lucky, introduced me to cannabis after I was diagnosed with epilepsy in order to help control my seizures. It was something we had to keep very quiet back then because that was 25 years ago.
Right.
I then, due to that, my dad introduced me to our local hydroponic shop. And I became friends with the boys there and then started working there as a Saturday girl when I came back from working for GlaxoSmithKline. And then carried on in that actual role. I enjoyed it. I had my son and they sponsored my PhD and did a PhD in fertilizer chemistry part-time. Unfortunately, during that time, the company I was working for went into administration and I set up what is now Aqualab 7 years ago, making liquid fertilizer for the Shogun range. And COVID has certainly done us some favours. It's certainly allowed our business to increase massively. I also work with licensed cultivation facilities within the UK and in Denmark, and there's one in New Zealand to do research looking into the secondary metabolite production, how we can increase that, how we can steer that, and really sort of looking and drilling down deep into the biochemistry of the plant to improve those particular ratios within those plants. Myself being epileptic, I'm interested in strains that are really good for epilepsy, making sure you've got higher levels of your CBDV in there and encouraging those to come through. So you've got that full kind of profile occurring with those terpenes as well, but not having to then reformulate when extractions occurred.
Yeah, and so I love it because you just got me all smiles because you're talking on high level. I love it. I love that stuff. So, but let's break it down a little bit for people who don't understand what's going on in England now. Can you give us a good overview about how's it started there for legalization? What are the challenges currently, and then how do they move forward to where more people can access this medication?
So in 2018, November 2018, the law changed. Cannabis was allowed to be prescribed legally, and you could hear the cheers for miles. It was everybody thought that was the turning point. Things were going to change. 2 years later, and we've still only got 4 prescriptions on the NHS.
Wow.
Now the NHS.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. As I understand, from state to state, it's different there, and you have to have health insurance.
Yeah. Well, NHS is basically, for people who don't know, it's their national healthcare system. So for America, it's kind of like Medicare, but it's for everybody.
Yeah, pretty much. So if we have an accident, you go to hospital, there's no paying for that. If you go to the doctors, your prescription is highly subsidised.
Okay.
Cannabis is not even on the table for people going on to the NHS to get a prescription. The biggest issue is the lack of education here. The doctors do not know about it. They have no idea. And there's people like myself trying to educate, trying to get the word out, trying to really, give high-end education so that the doctors understand what they're actually talking about and how to prescribe this.
Yeah. And we're just, we're seeing a lot of the same things here with the doctors. And what we're finding is you are a trailblazer in the UK to help educate them. What are you starting to see with the doctors who, or what we're seeing here in age and related to physicians? So what we're seeing is like 45 years old and younger physicians are pretty much pro-cannabis. 46 years old and older, not so much. So what kind of physician are you starting to see in England who is starting to look at cannabis as a tool in their toolbox of medicines?
Well, it's dependent where you go. So private clinics we've got currently. So we've got private cannabis clinics which you can go to and be prescribed, as I say, privately, depending on your conditions. But I think there's about 3,000 prescriptions occurred there, as I understand. But what we've got is something quite similar. I would say that the younger, as you say, under 45s are willing to listen, but we're getting this same line said to us. It's the same line of, yes, we understand, but we can't prescribe that, unfortunately. It is illegal. We have a big kind of CBD market here, a wellness market that's exploded. So there's a lot of products that unregulated, that there's no certificate of analysis for. The whole industry itself is not well regulated. So a lot of people are turning to that and turning to the black market because they're seeing things like the Phoenix tears occurring, with the Rick Simpson oil. There's lots of stories occurring from the UK that's starting to come through. We've got Hannah Deakin and Alfie Digley. She had to go over to the Netherlands in order to get her prescription. We've got Billy Caldwell as well. He's had to have it, prescriptions come in. He's actually managed to get a prescription on the NHS, but there is only 4. That is it. Only
Which is
4.
just insane. I mean, just to give you an idea, so in regards to the state of Florida, where we live, we're almost hitting 500,000 medical cannabis patients just in this state. Isn't that crazy? We're going up 5,000 people a week. And so, but the main difference between the UK, and even though we have more access right now, we're not legal federally, and you guys are legal federally, which is so exciting because you've hit the pinnacle where you make it legal federally, but they just haven't passed the ideological barrier, I guess you would say.
I think one of our biggest issues is we haven't got a domestic supply currently. Everything we have is imported. And that's what we need. We need to create a domestic supply and a choice of products as well, because there's a very limited choice here as well. And it goes back to that education. And there's a really big push for isolate here as opposed to actually full plant extracts. Now, I'm preaching to the converted. You guys both know about the full plant extracts and the isolates and the differences. But the isolate is just the pure compounds alone. And with a lot of diseases, particularly epilepsy, it's not as effective. You need higher concentrations of it, as opposed to using a full plant extract, which works a lot more in unity with the actual patient themselves.
And it's to me a more natural product. So for our listeners and viewers, can you give them a short little breakdown? What is the difference between a full plant extract and an isolate?
I relate it to sugar.
Okay.
So when you've got sugar cane and you get the syrup and the molasses from that, that's a full plant extract. Okay. So it's got warts and all in there, everything, lots and lots of different
I love it. Go ahead.
Lots of different compounds in there, all those different sugars. Isolate is like the refined granular sugar, that white, pure sucrose on its own. Okay. So that's what your isolate is. It's just one compound alone, which makes, from a scientific point of view, it makes studies loads easier. You've got one compound, you increase incrementally, so your results look beautiful, but it's not what's best for the patient.
Right.
The excuse here is there's not enough research.
Right. We hear that a lot over here, by the way. So, yeah, I know.
There's loads.
Right. You just don't want to look. Right. Let's don't look at all this stuff. Let's just look at this. And so that's why I just go crazy about when people say that. Also, the irony for you, GW Pharmaceuticals, those of you who do not know, they have a product that's been approved by the FDA called Epidiolex, and is made in England.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's yeah.
And did they have Epidiolex over there?
Yes, you can be prescribed that.
Okay.
It's only for particular diseases, but again, the NHS isn't prescribing. It's the barriers are there, and a lot of us are asking, well, why is this? Why is this? Is there something going off in the background? Are people trying to get their ducks in a row? I mean, you spoke about that the impact of it, and will this have an impact on the pharmaceutical industries and reduce the need for use of opioids?
Right.
Is this a reason?
Well, we're seeing that, and also this is what I think. What I think is that here we're noticing states that have legalized medical cannabis, people are decreasing the amount of other prescriptions 2 to 3 per month because they don't need them. And you and I know through the endocannabinoid system and the decrease in inflammation and so forth and so on. I think that's playing a role because what we see over here is one of the main blockers of cannabis legalization are private prisons, the pharmaceutical industry, and unions of private prisons because they have to lock the people up to make money.
You don't want to be cynical, and I try not to be. I try not to be, or anti-big business, but here it seems like there is something definitely going on. We are one of the world's largest exporters of cannabis. Mm-hmm. How is that? And we've still not really got a domestic supply.
I know.
Why is that? It just seems absolutely crazy. I had an appointment the other day, and I have to consider brain surgery before the prescribed cannabis here.
It's crazy. So tell me this: where, with your knowledge and kind of what's going on there now, what do you think is going to start happening in the cannabis industry, medical cannabis, there in 2021 and beyond?
Well, luckily, we had issues with Brexit with the importing from the Netherlands of a product called Bedrolite, a full plant extract that I work with MedCan Support, which is a group which helps support parents with children with factory epilepsy who are choosing cannabis as one of the tools, as one of the kind of treatments that they're using. A lot of them still need to use their pharmaceuticals as well, but it's just one of their tools. So what we're trying to do is help support them and talk to them and sort of demystify it. So if they've got any issues with the products they're getting through or anything, there's a lot of kind of hearsay rather than hard facts here. I mean, I said I did a degree in biomedical sciences, and the endocannabinoid system wasn't even mentioned. It didn't exist. Yeah. All I got taught about cannabis was how to do forensics on it, and that was it. How to detect if somebody had been taking it. That was your lot.
Yeah.
And that's where it needs to start. The education. We need to get it into degrees, into all medical schools. It needs to be part, just like you would learn about their digestive system. Right. That's where it needs to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, Dr. Callie, tell us, for people here who want to get a hold of you, how can we get a hold of you?
Best place is Instagram, and that's at Dr. Callie Seaman. You can get me on LinkedIn as well, and you can check out the Aqualabs website. Okay,
and then can you spell your name to everybody to make sure on LinkedIn they can find you the right way?
No problems. That's Callie. Seaman, Seaman, as in the footballer, David Seaman.
And see, a lot of people, okay, that's soccer, everybody who's listening. Yeah, so just to make sense, okay. Because we have shows with Australia, and when we say football, they may think footy or something like that. This is a global show. But Dr. Callie Seaman, thank you so much for educating us on what's going on in the UK, and we look forward to hearing more of you in the future.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. All right. That was awesome having Dr. Callie on here. This is great. So, Mark, take us into the entrepreneurial.
The Cannabis Entrepreneur Tip of the Day.
Tip of the day is sponsored by Self-Disrupt. Self-Disrupt is a modern-day white-glove personal branding service. If you need to be seen, they will get you noticed. If you have value to give, they make it more shareable in today's digital landscape. Bottom line is Self-Disrupt strategically crafts your legacy through personal branding content. For more information, go to theselfdisrupt.com. Mike, I added a little flavor to that ad. I'll take it back to you.
All right. We love the flavor. Okay, the tip of the day is use fear to your advantage. So many people said, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to do it. That's okay.
Do they say it like that?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes it's kind of funny. So you're like, I don't know what to do. So I'm the same way. A lot of times I get scared. So use that to your advantage. So one of the things, give you an example, is I went to speak in front of a county commission office. It was Brevard County, actually, where we are here in Melbourne. And they were voting on whether to allow dispensaries in the state of Florida for medical cannabis. So medical cannabis dispensaries, the rule is in Florida is you can allow them, and if you allow them, you can't set a limit on them, or you can ban them outright. So at this time, they were banned it outright. So this video is actually on our Facebook page. It's U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical Research and Development. So if you're watching this, I'll put it below on LinkedIn, so you can click on that. But I went in, and so I knew that they had already talked about it before, and they didn't want to do it. And so I went in and I prepared the speech ahead of time, because if you've never spoken in the county commission office, you have all these people coming up, and they usually give you 3 to 4 minutes. So I came in and I wrote out everything I was going to say, and I wrote out what I was going to, kind of the direction I wanted to go, and how am I going to convince these people who really don't know anything about cannabis. And so how's this going to be taken around my community, because I'm coming out to my whole community that I do cannabis full time and I do all this stuff. So I came out and practiced. For the first minute of what I said, I basically told them that I know everything about this business, and if you come at me on live TV and try to make me look bad, I'm going to totally destroy you. That was my whole, because they're all pro.
In a really nice way.
In really nice.
In a really nice way.
So that's why I preface this, because you can watch this on it, but this is what's going through my head. I walk up to the stage, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let anybody take me down by doing this, and that fear made me push and push and push to get this done. Long story short, we won the vote 5-0, and on top of that, I got a standing ovation to the entire 8 people who were in the crowd, and we won. And so the point is like, I was so scared when I started, but by the time I got through it ended great, because I prepared and I used that fear of failure to go out and crush it and work over and over and practice in front of the mirror before I went out there and really do it to where I felt very confident. So the more fearful you are, the more you need to study and practice and get better, and then that will make you succeed in whatever you're going to do.
Well, Mike, that's a great example, but it also highlights the fact that the people that are elected legislators that are making decisions on cannabis policy know nothing about cannabis.
Right.
So it takes the educated, industry to educate the rest of the general public, because those are the ones that are creating the laws in order for us to function. So if it's not for the cannabis industry setting its rules, who's going to set them for us? People who don't understand what our industry is. So fantastic tip of the day, Mike.
Thank you. Oh, let's move into our champion.
The Cannabis Champion of the Week.
Cannabis Champion of the Week, sponsored to you by the World CBD Awards. If you want to be part of the world's only objective product awards competition, the World CBD Awards Conference and Gala is for you. For more information, go to worldcbdawards.com.
All right, champion of the day is Megan Kahn. Megan Kahn is Megan. Last name is Kahn, and she is a domestic violence case manager. And you're wondering, how is she a champion? Well, I'm about to tell you. Floridians have been legally prescribed medical marijuana since 2017, and there are currently almost 500,000 patients statewide, which is the largest medical program in the United States. But there's nothing in the state law that prohibits employers from discriminating against patients. And Megan Kahn is one of those people who've been discriminated against. Megan Kahn graduated with a degree in social work last year. She got her professional license soon after her graduation, and around the same time she was prescribed medical cannabis. She got a job offer in her field. She sent in all the documentation. She sent in a picture of her medical marijuana card and her prescription to her employer. But the job offer was revoked when THC showed up in her drug test. The employer even went further and reported her as an impaired clinician to the State Board of Social Work. Megan was told she would have to complete a year-long rehab program to lose her, or she would lose her license. She said, "I can't even drink alcohol. It's abstinence completely." The Florida Commissioner of Agriculture, Nikki Fried, told us that medical marijuana employment discrimination is affecting almost every industry. Quote, "We need to start to realize this is a medicine and people are taking it for medical benefits, and they should not be criminalized against inside working in their workforce. For now, Megan and other patients have to choose between their medicine and their livelihoods." Megan says, quote, "It's really hard to know that with people doing things legally, people are still being treated like criminals, still losing employment and being discriminated against," end quote. Megan has found her a new employer and is willing to work with her, but she still has to complete the rehab program in order to save her license. Megan's suffering has brought new awareness to this issue and a renewed fight to push for others not to go through the same terrible situation. I would like to thank Megan for letting us tell her story in order to help others not be discriminated against for using cannabis as a legal medicine. So if you know other champions in the industry, please DM me on LinkedIn and let's get their information out there. And that's the end of our show, everybody. That's the way it is in the world of cannabis today. The power of change is within all of us, and the world changes when we change. We had an awesome time doing this show. I want to thank Dr. Callie for being on. And always remember, we are all we need. Peace out.
Later.